I don't know why I don't start the videos until like after I'm done with the yawn. But so like on this one, I kind of want to talk a little bit about like the Catholic Church and what about it has kind of. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about this in like my second video. Ooh, low battery. I think I talked about this a little bit in my second video, but it, it's like an insane transformation, and I think it's only been like maybe like a year and a half, maybe a couple months that it's kind of like started to manifest into like what I always expected, like myself to feel like towards like Christianity sort of thing. But I think it's an exciting time for me when it comes to that sort of stuff, and it's stuff that like bores a lot of people because I don't think they get it. And that's usually because other people haven't given them the information, or they just like they don't like want to get it. It's like with other religions for me, like I don't like I'm open to understanding like what Buddhism is, but like people would have to take the time to like explain it to me because it's like fucking like what are the odds I go looking for it? At some point I probably will, when I feel a little bit more satisfied with like how much how far I've come along with when it comes to like Christianity, um, Buddhism, Hinduism, that sort of thing, and I don't mind learning them side by side, but it's like that's what it is, you know. It's just like that sort of thing. It's just like these ideologies, or any school of thought sort of thing. It's people assume others have just as much access to that sort of information as like they do, and that they'll find it just as valuable as they will. And I don't agree with the idea at all that it's subjective. It's like I think one thing is objectively better than the other one, and there's some of them that are almost just as good, but they're just incomplete and they're not quite there yet, but they make sense, you know. And I've talked about this with like some of my other friends, and like some of the things, like some of the philosophies they hold or these ideologies that they belong to, it's like they make a lot of sense, but it's not quite there. I don't quite agree that it's complete, right? And who am I to say whether it's complete or not? It's just I hold the position that things are objective, and with that frame of reference, I want to say analyze, but I use that I use my frame of reference to pursue ideas and analyze them, sure, for lack of a better term, and assess. That's the word. Assess whether they follow, like whether they follow certain like where do they lead, and like where do they end, and like where some of them like in a loop, you know what I mean, like where some steps like you get to like step 3 and then it just loops with itself, or just loops back to the top, or just it doesn't really quite finish, you know, and there's no like end. And I think that's the problem with a lot of ideas is they kind of like loop back into each other and don't necessarily like flourish and like finish. There's no end. And if there's I don't know, if there is an end, if like that's like a good idea to have like this sort of an end with your like perspectives on things. And I'll get to the Christianity and Catholic thing, but I think the end is that it leads to like this perfection, this idea of perfection, and you'll never reach it. And it's not a good idea to pursue perfection, but it's a good idea to build the foundation to be open to receiving that perfection, sort of a thing. Because I don't think it's something that you can necessarily attain. It's something that you can like exude out of yourself once you've covered all these bases, and like now you orient yourself in like pursuing these pillars, and that'll build like the house of perfection like for you, right? And like again, it's not something you can like grab. It's something that like you have to like do with other people, and this is something that I completely believe. You have to have like because you live in this world, because you interact with other people, because you exist with everyone. It has to be other people that gives you. It has to be something outside of you as well, like something inside and something outside of you that bolsters you to that level of perfection. and that's the whole reason you would pursue these like ideas or ideals, and restrictions to play this game correctly, to end the to finish, to win, to because without other players of the same, like I'm kind of getting back to that, without other players, there's nothing that you can't win, sort of thing. There's nothing that you want, right? And it's not at the expense of others, but it's with the aid of others that you, I gotta text that one guy back. Crap. It just has to. It can't loop, or just be incomplete. It has to fulfill itself. And if it's not fulfilled itself, then it's like it needs to be worked on. And with the knowledge that we have currently, it needs to. If there is a path to pursue with it, then it needs to continue to be pursued. But so far, I think a lot of truths and pillars that you can build your house of possible perfection on, with the help of others, like I said, already exist and are already like revealed to many people. Although nobody is like attained it, and I do believe like Jesus did or whatever, right? Because like I'm a Christian, I think all Christians believe that. That's the reason a lot of us build that sort of like foundation with those pillars, or that's the reason a lot of us Christians try to use those as pillars for our house of perfection. It's sometimes a lot of our houses suck, sort of thing. But with Catholicism, the reason I've found it so exciting is because, and this is just a practical reason, right? This isn't an excuse as to why it would be the truth, but it's just the depth. And I'm sure you would find this in a lot of other major religions, right? But because I was not that like excited about like my faith when I was younger. I was always Christian, and I probably always will be, just because it's just been ingrained, and I've it's not that I've accepted that I will always be Christian, but it's just like that makes sense that I would always be Christian. It's just been ingrained, and I've questioned it plenty of times, and I probably will continue to question it. But it's just like what would it take for me to be convinced true, like truly, like with the truth? What would it take, and why would it be that convinces me that Christianity is false, right? And why do other arguments that convince other people do not really sound that compelling to me? Some of the arguments for Christianity I found it completely stupid. And some of them some of the most simple ones that most people find ridiculous, I find moving. With Catholicism, it's just the depth, and it's not just the depth. It's just this vast array of things, right? And it doesn't even let's say it's just a couple of things. Let's just say it's 5 things. Within those 5 things, there's an insane amount of depth that has been looked into for the past 2,000 years, and it makes sense, like, to me. It just makes sense to me, right? Like why these things have been thought and accepted. It's like with these 5 things, and there's multiple things, right? It's not just these 5 things, but like maybe there's just a couple categories, and within these things, it's an infinite sea of just like you'll get lost, and you won't even feel like you've made 1% by the end of your life. I would assume you don't feel satisfied. You don't feel finished. I wouldn't say satisfied. You don't feel finished. You feel satisfied in that you're like pursuing something that it's worth. Makes sense to pursue. You'll never get tired of it. It's from what I've seen, because I've seen some of usually like these people, like these Catholics that are old. They're just like, what are y'all still doing here? It's like, haven't y'all finished? Not even close. They don't see it that way, and I never understood why these older people were still like around and like putting up with this boring crap. This is the way y'all communicate with people. No, is this what community is to y'all? Is this like all you guys have? Like, I was a high schooler, is what you think. You think, oh, my life is so great, I have all these friends. It's like, once it's all gone, I guess, like, what do you have left? For some people, it's the church. But there were those people that just, like, they have everything still, but it's just this that matters the most to them. And I just never got that. I'm like, why do you give a crap so much? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And the same thing I don't just find in the Catholic Church, I find with a lot of other religions. And I think that's a lot of it too. It's just like within those religions, there's just a lot of truth and a vast array of it, right? Sort of a thing. But I don't agree that they're complete truths. I stand with this frame of reference saying that because all the truths are contained within this realm. Any other realm that exists or any other domain that's out there doesn't have the complete truth. And I examine those based off of this frame of reference, and it's biased. No crap, that's how bias works. It's biased, but that's just how I think that's just how humans think. And like people want to act like they're not biased, and like I don't even say that. People don't. It's not that people don't want to act like they're not biased, but people want to like be as unbiased as possible when they're examining something. And that's not like I don't think it's a helpful position to take. I think it's important to be biased, right? It's important to be biased so that when your frame of reference crumbles, what is it that you rest on? What is it that you fall back on? Is it into nothingness? Is it just chaos? Like what exists when you don't have this pillar? When this is not here for you anymore. So I think it's important to be biased, but it's not to the point where it's radical, where you would never let go, right? It's just you use this bias that you have as a frame of reference to then examine and assess the rest of other claims that are similar to it. And when you do that, you do it appropriately and tactfully, right? Where once you realize like how weak your pillars are, it's like, dude, accept defeat. Accept that you know, it's not that accept defeat at the hands of other people requesting you to accept defeat, but it's more search for what would convince you and then use that as a way to strengthen yourself. Whether it's like you're like, even the strongest argument for you sucks, or even the most compelling argument for your side doesn't do anything for me. Even that doesn't move me for some reason. And examine why it doesn't move you. But it could, and then you understand like what was it about this that moved me to accept now this other ideology completely for some reason, right? Or now it's given me more of an understanding why I probably should accept the rest of it, because like this has made so much sense. Now I need to look into all these other reasons as to why these other parts could possibly make sense too. So with Catholicism, that's what I love so much, is that it gives you an insanely huge frame of reference to then examine the world, where a lot of other frame of references, it's beautiful. It's a very good foundation, but it's not vast, right? Catholicism gives me that. And in Catholic Church, people usually attack it because like it's done a lot of terrible things. Rapes children. Not the Catholic Church, but the people within it have done terrible things. Have raped the children, have neglected people that are in dire need of help, have killed people for the dumbest things. Like it's church itself has the people within the church for centuries have done terrible things. No shit. Okay, I've acknowledged that. I'm moving on from that. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like that was terrible. They shouldn't have done that. I'm not responsible for any of that. But I am responsible for supporting that sort of thing if it still continues to go on. And being within the organization doesn't mean I support that sort of behavior, as long as I don't accept those doctrines. Because there's no doctrine that says you need to harm people, sort of a thing, right? It's just people, through their own terribleness, have represented a lot of the Catholic Church and done these things. And I'll do the same thing too. I'll give the Catholic Church a terrible name, right? But it's not, to me, I don't understand why that would be a reason to abandon it. And this might be a false analogy, but it would be, to me, it's similar in the sense that, like, I wouldn't abandon my university for not letting black people take the same sort of classes that white people were once allowed to take, or a certain town that I live in once being, like, racist at some point, you know? Like, you say, oh, but, like, the difference is... Again, I think it might be a false analogy. This is the best one. When I'm not conversing with somebody, I can't see like exactly where it goes wrong. But like, forgive me if I am. A person could say like, "Oh, well, those things don't exist anymore. They're better now." Well, it's like no, like there's still like racist people. There's still hateful people out there. They exist in these organizations and institutions that are possibly at the top of these institutions, and nobody's aware of it because they're just so good at saying certain words and being poetic and beautiful and convincing and moving or whatever. But you know. You still stay within the organization and you try and fix it. You try, by you being there, you convince yourself and you convince others that because you're here, this place will be better. That's just the position I take when it comes to like all those terrible things that they've done. My comment on them is like, they shouldn't have happened. Stop making them happen. That's pretty much it. But when it comes to the doctrine, the theology, all that sort of stuff, the church, it's profound. And people call it stupid. I get it. People mock it. People mock it. Really, they do. But I find it rare people engage with the actual like doctrine sometimes for some reason. It's like some people do. I think if anybody does, like maybe Protestants do, but not frequently. It's like I would say it's a misunderstanding that they employ when they speak with Catholics. It's just their frame of reference. Like, this is what it means. Like, people pretty much live on different planets when it comes to these ideologies and different religions and groups and stuff like that. Their frame of reference is just too close to be able to assess us properly, I would say. And Catholics do the same sort of thing. Because they try and pin Protestants down, but you can't. Because you can pin Lutherans down maybe. You can pin Baptists down, but you can't pin Protestants. There's just too many of them. But it's just, when I say Protestants, it's just because a lot of them like to come after us. So because they all disagree with us, obviously, right? On some very important issues. But their frame of reference, I'm gonna be kind of a dick here. I'm gonna say it's because it's just too small. It's not vast, and that's what I've found when I was with certain Protestant groups. Is they're very intelligent, obviously understand a lot, but it's just because they don't accept authority. They don't have the opportunity to expand their foundation, even if it's wrong. Even if the Pope is wrong and all the bishops are wrong, and I know you agree, you're saying, yes, of course they're wrong. Yes, Henry, good job. The cardinals are wrong, the priests are wrong, all the laymen are wrong. Even if they're wrong, they've made decisions on these things. It's a decision that they've made, and they're sticking with it until they say, nope, that's heresy. Do not believe in that. That's not the truth. I don't know if they've ever gone back on certain doctrines. I haven't really examined that, but because we have the Pope, because we have the head of the church, the servant of servants or whatever, the bishops, the cardinals, it's we have this foundation that's been decided. This is what we believe, and it goes this far and even further, more than I'm aware of, because we will continue to discover these things. And with this frame of reference, I examine other religions and I examine the world, sort of. And it's a huge foundation, and I'm being kind of a dick by saying the Protestants have a smaller foundation, but they do because they've existed for less time, and two, because they don't necessarily respect authority to the fullest extent. They do kind of when it comes to being within their local church, but not really much beyond that. And maybe they do, but it's not as complex as the Catholics, because the Catholics get complex, and it gets to a point where it's what the hell is transubstantiation? Why would you guys even come up, the Orthodox don't agree with us on that crap, right? And that's fine, but that's my point. It's we have this foundation from which we can now engage with the Orthodox and say, look, this is where we might have gone wrong, and this is where I kind of still agree with the Catholic Church, but I don't agree with them completely, blah, blah, blah. And we can just have that. That's why conversations between Orthodox and Catholic, I think, can be very fruitful. A very in-depth and beautiful conversation, even though there's a lot of tension there sometimes, but I don't really feel that when I talk with Orthodox. It can be a little fucked up sometimes, the shit we say to each other. Some of the saints within our church are saints because they were opposing the Orthodox. It's there's bad blood, but it's not the same with Protestants, where it's just the foundation isn't, just the frame of reference isn't large enough. It's not there, right? It's you yourself and the people you know around you, even all the people that you know around you, aren't enough to be able to make up a foundation large enough for you to use as a frame of reference to engage with the Catholic Church. Because I'm not using the foundation that I've created, right? And this may sound lazy, but I'm not using the foundation that I've created to then examine the world. I'm using the foundation that has been laid out for me. I've accepted by being a part of the Catholic Church, explored, will continue to explore, hopefully add to the foundation, or if anything, build on top of it, and then use that. And because I get to use that, I get access from Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint Jerome, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, like these people that like Protestants are like, yeah, those guys are smart, but then they're fallible men. It's a lot of things they said that were wrong. Okay. Those guys might have been wrong, and some of our foundation might be wrong, but it's a frame of reference from which I can engage where Protestants just don't think about these things. They just don't think about the things that we think about. We think about transubstantiation. We think about the Eucharist. And from that, we can examine the world and tell you why this is right. And because we have such a large foundation, the Protestants don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to engage with it because they haven't thought about it. And they have thought about it in the sense that they want to combat it and say, you're wrong on this. So why are you wrong on this? But it's just more like a negative position rather than like, here's like our positions on these things, and now we're gonna have a conversation about it. That's how conversations usually are made. Whereas like it's a debate because it's like they're trying to like, I wouldn't say take away from what we've created. It kind of is. It's kind of just like trying to like take away, tear down sort of things. Like this is wrong, that's wrong. That these traditions, no, they're wrong. Like I think it's rare that Protestants say all traditions are terrible, but there's certain ones like the Eucharist or whatever. It's just like it has to be like you have to tear it down because it's just they don't believe it's true, right? But they kind of don't get it because it's like they're looking up, right? So they don't understand the fullness of it, right? And a lot of them do. A lot of them do and still disagree with it. That's perfect. If you understand it and you disagree with it, I don't give a shit. Perfect. Like, disagree with it. There's some things I don't agree with in the Catholic Church, right? And, but I understand it a little bit more than, like, most Protestants do, where they just disagree with it because they just disagree with it. Same thing with Buddhism, Hinduism. I haven't completely rejected those ideologies because I don't get them. I don't understand them. I've never really examined it. I don't know what their foundation's like. But because my foundation is so large, I know I could engage with people of those faiths and have a very fruitful conversation. I've had conversations with people that are of those religions, and it's beautiful. Like the idea of karma is like it's not an idea I completely agree with, but it's like it's a beautiful idea. It's like it makes sense. It's kind of the way I live my life sometimes, but not completely. It makes sense because like I kind of do that, but I kind of don't. But they've used a certain concept of human beings and have described it accurately. It's like human beings will get what's coming to them, and more often than not, I find that situation to be the case. God kind of says that sort of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing, right? You get what's coming to you, but it's not carried out to the fullest extent. But it kind of is. It's kind of justice sort of a thing, right? But I think justice is more played out like in heaven rather than like it can't really be seen or understood here on earth. But it's true. Like you're gonna get what's coming to you, but it's not as like local as like karma is. And like I guess that's maybe why I disagree with it, but that's also a misunderstanding I probably have of it, right? But it's a fruitful conversation I can have with them because it's like there's a lot of truth to it. So I live that way sometimes. I do live as if like I'm gonna get what's coming to me because of like I just did this. Like I don't deserve blah 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 because I deserve to have what happened to that person or worse. It's kind of justice. It's kind of the idea of justice. It's the virtue of justice. It's a cardinal virtue. Aristotle thought of that one, right? So that's what I love about the Catholic Church. It's a frame of reference. It's a beautiful frame of reference. That's pretty much the whole thing that I'm saying. It's a huge frame of reference that's deep, and gives me the ability to examine the world and understand where I'm wrong, or where I think the Catholic Church is wrong, where I think the Catholic Church is right, where I think these people are wrong, and these people are right. Yeah, and there's a lot of other things too that are more in depth, but it's 23 minutes, so peace, deuces.